Okay, so I promise this is the last time I'm going to be making a video about Halo, at least for some time anyway, because I'm very aware that if I make any more, then this might as well basically be a dedicated Halo channel. And to be honest, once that remake for Metal Gear gets announced, we're going to pivot to a solely dedicated Metal Gear channel, so look forward to that. Obviously, if you've been paying attention to the news, over the last 24 hours, quite a lot has happened. And not just for 343 Industries, we're talking Microsoft/Xbox as a whole. And oddly enough, I've seen a lot of changes in structure and redundancy in the games media industry too. There's a lot of things going on. The economy isn't great for a bunch of obvious reasons. And with that comes situations like this. And by that, if you're unaware, I mean that 343 Industries, the developers, or the current developers of Halo, have let go of roughly, from what I'm hearing, somewhere in the range of like 40 to 60 employees, I think it is. Now, while I understand that these things happen, the troubling part for me is that on top of the obvious sadness that comes with people losing their jobs, it's also interesting to me the specific people who have lost their jobs. Now, the word on the street, as the kids say, is that the majority of these sackings are from areas like single player, campaign, art direction, most notably Joseph Staten. Now, the short version of the story behind him is that Joseph Staten was one of the leading developers behind Halo in the Bungie days, all the way from CE up until Reach. I think he left with Bungie to go and make Destiny, and then I think he left Bungie after Destiny 1 to come back to Xbox to work in their publishing team to basically just help out with whatever projects they wanted him to help out with. In 2020, when Halo Infinite got delayed for roughly a year, Joe Staten took the role of creative lead over at 343 to get Halo out the door and, you know, help out, because who better to help out than, you know, one of the guys that worked on the writing, the story, the cinematics and all that, and knows what Halo is about. Joe Staten was essentially there to get things back on track. Now, this is not me saying that, you know, he's the single saviour of the developer. Obviously, it takes hundreds of people to make this kind of thing work. But, you know, he's one of the founding fathers, for lack of a better term. So with him at 343, it did give me a sense of hope. And when I say that, I don't mean to say that the people at 343 were doing a bad job. Let me be crystal clear on that. More just, I felt Joe would steer things back in the direction that I wanted to see them go. But that's obviously a very, you know, selfish and personal point of view. So Halo releases in 2021. Campaign and multiplayer comes out. Obviously, everybody's very aware of the game was somewhat unfinished in some areas. There were key features missing. I've already covered all of those points. I'm not going to go over that again. But Joe sticks around. He doesn't come in and get the game out the door and then dip. He sticks around for a while longer. And from everything I've heard, in fact, I'm pretty sure he explicitly said so in an interview, that he was working on new campaign content, because the original plan for Halo Infinite was it was going to be the next 10 years of Halo. It was basically going to be a platform to release a whole bunch of single player and multiplayer content, almost kind of like the way Destiny is working now, where it's gone on for ages, but they just keep supporting it with new content. I mean, that campaign even ends on not a cliffhanger, but definitely a, I don't know what you would call it. I mean, Esparza literally says at the end of that game, like, oh, the Banished is still controlling the rest of the ring. So, you know, they set that up to be, we're going to add campaign DLC where we take back the rest of the ring and, you know, help fight off the Banished. And that would open possibilities for more enemies, more allies, more, you know, just more characters to come in and discover more mysteries from around the ring. They even trademarked Halo: The Endless, who were the bad guys set up at the end of that campaign. But Staten's gone now. He's gone back to sort of Xbox publishing, so he's going to be helping out from that side of things again. He's not going to be working directly on Halo. And with the 30, 40, 50, 60, however many people it is that have also lost their jobs, with the majority of them being from the side of things that would work on campaign content, I mean, what message are you supposed to take from that other than Xbox/Microsoft basically saying, we're done with Infinite? I mean, I know they're going to keep the multiplayer ticking over. Season 3 is 6 weeks away, I think. There's that rumoured Battle Royale mode that is in the works, but that's not even been officially announced yet, so I can assume that's still some ways away. And I don't want to be dramatic and say, oh, this is the end of Halo, or Halo's dead, or whatever. But I don't know where they go from here. I don't know what the future of this franchise looks like. If that campaign content has been completely cut, like is Halo just a multiplayer shooter now? No more new stories, no more new lore, no more big action set pieces with Chief and, you know, the new characters that they had introduced. My initial first thought was, okay, worst case scenario, they're going to keep this multiplayer ticking over to see how it goes, see if they can monetize it as best as possible, see how that Battle Royale goes, but that's kind of it. They're essentially sunsetting Halo. Like, all of Halo hinges on how much money they can make off of microtransactions from the multiplayer. That to me is like worst case scenario. Best case scenario is that, I don't know, they've decided that working on that slipspace engine wasn't quite right and they want to do another soft reboot on a new engine with a new team, starting from complete scratch and, you know, put things together in a very slow and careful way to make sure they don't make any of the missteps that they already have with this one. But even in that best case scenario, what, we don't see another Halo for 5-6 years? I mean, development times are only getting longer and longer as these consoles get more powerful. The problem for me is that I feel like if I had to put my money on which one of those two scenarios is more likely to happen, I'm definitely leaning towards the worst case scenario of them just trying to compete with Halo in the Battle Royale world, even though they might be a bit too late to the party on that one because extraction shooters are kind of taking over a little bit now anyway. But I mean, I'm not going to dive into all of the ongoings at Xbox and Microsoft. There's already a lot of people talking about that stuff and the confusion behind, you know, how can you spend 70 billion on Activision and then let go of like 10,000 employees? I'm not going to get stuck into all of that. I'm no business expert, and nor do I know the ongoings internally at Microsoft and Xbox. But I think the worrying thing for me is it feels like they may be pivoting away from Halo being their big name. I mean, I could be reading too much into things, but I saw a screenshot the other day of the new packaging for the Xbox Series S and Series X. Like, Chief ain't even on that box anymore. He's been replaced with Starfield. Now, obviously, that could just be marketing, but something about that just doesn't feel right to me. But like I said, I could be reading way too much into that. Now, I know they haven't gutted 343 completely. Obviously, there are still a lot of developers there, and they're going to continue to work on the multiplayer side of things and put together new content and maps and, you know, all the new seasonal stuff that's going to be going on over the coming year. But they were, well, I don't want to say they were, but it definitely seemed like they were struggling with the amount of stuff that they had on their plate already. From the outside, again, because I'm not in there and I don't know what's going on internally, from the outside, it seemed like they needed a lot more staff. It seemed like they needed twice as many people that they had at the time to put out the content that they wanted to at the timescales that they wanted to and work. I mean, they cut co-op or couch co-op from Infinite's campaign. Not because it didn't work, simply because they didn't have the resources that they needed to put into making it run as best as possible. They were already making tough decisions on, okay, we're going to delay Season 2. Okay, we're going to cut this feature. Okay, we're going to push this back. Even with the amount of staff that they already had, they were having to make tough decisions about how they made Halo Infinite a better game. And now they have even less staff than they did before. I mean, I'd be super interested to learn how much of a surprise all of this Microsoft stuff was. Whether they knew, you know, this was coming, or whether they all just got an email one day and said, oh yeah, you've got to go. Because in the interviews and the live streams and the press releases that they were putting out, the team there seemed like they were really excited about 2023 for Infinite and talking about, oh, we're in a really good place and we're finally in a space where we can put out much more regular content. Does that talk all get thrown out the window now? Does Season 3 still come in March? I mean, on top of this as well, I'm seeing a bunch of tweets from developers who left 343 a while back, who are basically saying that Halo was set up to fail. The management at the top is not doing their job properly, and they didn't have enough staff, or they didn't have the right staff, or just basic decision making was flawed in a lot of ways. So it's obvious that there's some things going on there that, I don't know, something's not quite right. I feel really bad for the developers at 343 is also what I want to say, is that I can't imagine how tough it is to put all this time and effort into something, like just working day after day on something to try and make it as best as possible, but you don't quite have the resources to get it over the line, and you're seeing people online talking about how they're disappointed with the game, and you're also disappointed with the game, but you can't tell them that things just, you know, I've seen a lot of people just shouting at 343 over the last year and a bit, which to me doesn't make any sense, because I just kind of think, well, they're just kind of doing their jobs as best as they can. They don't decide how many people are helping them out with it, or whether they, you know what I mean? The employee's responsibility is to carry out the jobs given to them to the best of their ability. The employer's responsibility is to make sure that the work given to the employee is doable. If that person at the top misjudges just how much work it takes to get this stuff right, then this is what happens. Hopefully we get some sort of official statement from Xbox or 343 that gives us a little detail on how things are going to play out over the next 12 months. I don't know, it's just so... Boy, I'm at a bit of a loss for words, if I'm honest. At the end of the day, look, I love this franchise. I want to see it do well. I want to see it thrive. It doesn't need to be King of the Hill, excuse the pun. I just want to see it do as well as I know it can do. I want the history of this franchise to be utilised as best as possible, because there's a lot of angles that you could explore it from. However, if the Master Chief Collection is still online and I can still go back and play my old Halos and jump into that multiplayer, like the things they've done over there are fantastic. As long as that thing exists, then like I've still got my Halo, I guess. It's just a shame. It really is. Like watching all of this play out, watching the last year of Infinite and seeing everything kind of stumble across the finish line, listening to 343 having to do the unfortunate job of constantly going, hey, sorry guys, we're trying to get this right, for them to get all the way to the end of this sort of process where they were just about starting to get excited about, hey, we're in a good place now, we can get, oh, sorry, we're getting rid of a bunch of people. Like, what a crappy situation. So I don't know what happens now. I don't think people at 343 possibly even know what happens now. But boy, what a what an end to this story. Christ. So yeah, I don't really have a way to end this video other than to just say, this sucks, I'm disappointed, and I feel sorry for the people who have now been put in the position where they have to find new work. It's all just a big mess. There's no real silver lining to any of this, of course. And I understand a lot of this is part of a bigger problem in regards to the economy and where everybody is at. But as a huge fan of this franchise, I am now hugely concerned for its future. I'm not concerned that the people working on it aren't going to try and do the best job that they can, but I am concerned that they're not going to have the resources and help that they need to do the job that they want to do. So that's it. I've been Inept Saiyan. You as always have been a wonderful audience, and I hope to catch you next time.